Hi everyone, it's Deb Jordan sitting in for Pete Santilli on Guerrilla Media Network's YouTube channel. And I'm going to bring you guys a much needed update from the trial of the United States versus Clive and Bundy and everyone else. So thanks for being with us today. Pete says hello and he loves you guys, and thanks for your continuing support. So this week has been just a roller coaster of emotion. We have seen the prosecution and the BLM really show their true colors, and it is, for lack of a better term, just an extenuation of the overreach that was happening in April of 2014. Nothing has changed. They're still as arrogant and as just hateful, and they would do anything to win this case, including lying. And we all know that because we were there, and it was pretty much live streamed out 24/7. People knew what was happening. There was nothing hidden here. And so, the government is really trying its best to sway the minds of these jurors, right? So let's talk about the lying part. Okay. What they really want to do here is change the narrative. And instead of it being, the American citizens who were fearing for their lives, they want the jury to believe that it was the BLM who was in fear for their lives. And they're setting up this whole narrative of it was intense, we were frightened, we weren't sleeping, and some of these guys were going on 1-2 hours of sleep in a 48-hour period, and that they did the best that they could, and they just wanted to get out of their life, and they wanted to take the cattle with them. They didn't want to leave them because it was property of the United States government. And so that's why they stayed and didn't get any sleep and did the things that they did, because they wanted to win. And it was all at the insistence of a very corrupt BLM agent named Daniel P. Love, and not one of them even want to admit that he had any authority over them now, even though he was the man who was in control of this whole operation. So, that's when you're sitting there and you're hearing this whole story and the words that are coming out of their mouth, it's just really increasingly hard to believe. But, we just sit there and try not to show any emotion because we're not allowed to, because if we do, we get thrown out of the courtroom. We can't roll our eyes, we can't smile, we can't shrug our shoulders, we can't shake our heads. I mean, basically, we just have to be robots sitting there because they don't want us, the American people, to have any influence over that jury. So, but it's tough. That's tough going because it is very emotional, and we do react. I try my best not to, but boy, sometimes it's just really tough. But I listen to these BLM agents, and I listen to them. Every single one of them have the same exact story, a story that they didn't tell 3 years ago, 3 years after. 3 days after the event, when they all filled out their reports. None of them talked about being, so fearful that, that they felt like they weren't going to be able to do their job anymore. And none of them talked about gunmen. None of them talked about gunmen holding weapons on them, pointing weapons at them. But now suddenly, 3 years later, it occurs to them that that's what happened. And they're also rehearsed that they tell the same exact story, almost line for line. They also say that, these gunmen were strategically moving in and out of the crowd, and getting getting a better advantage and moving higher up, you know. And of course then, the government brings in their sniper team manager and it's the first time we've heard them admit that there was a marksman team, and make no mistake, that means sniper team at the Bundy Ranch, and they had been there the whole time. They came with for the party with Daniel P. Love, and we'll get into that. When I say party, I mean it. I'm not just kidding. Um, so all of these BLM agents are talking about being stressed, being awake all the time, and nobody has accounted yet for a dumpster full of alcohol bottles, empty ones. Okay, beer, liquor bottles, and I would like to know which one of these BLM agents, drank all that while they're on duty, while they're on a compound doing their job, supposedly doing their job. These guys all found time to sit around and have a party, and from the looks of it, they had several. I want to know how many of those agents who were down in that wash were sleep deprived and hungover. For me, that's huge. And I keep waiting. I keep waiting for that question to be asked. And I hope that it is, because it needs to be, because it's important. It's important to note that these men were yucking it up out in that wash, saying, making fun of overweight women. They were picking out dogs that they were going to kill. They were making fun of Metro Police Department. They were, and what they called it this week was, when they were asked about that, all the jokes that they were saying and all the horrible things that they were saying, they called it black humor. Black humor. Now, if you were anybody else but the BLM, the left would be screaming right now that that was a racist remark. But of course, we can't do that because, they've convinced the left that Cliven Bundy is a racist. But they used black humor, whatever the heck that means, and made fun of people, talked about shooting people, made fun of Metro Police Department, stood around and drank water and stood out in the open. All the while, they're saying that all of these gunmen had weapons pointed at them. So here they all are walking around. Dan Love is walking back and forth from the gate. The Nevada State Highway Patrol is up on the bridges, standing right there with Eric Parker and a few other guys, And a big question was, well, what was Metro Police and Nevada Highway Patrol doing up there? Well, we don't know. We still can't figure that out, one of them says. We still haven't figured that out, they say. Well, it's easy to figure out. They were not frightened. They didn't have, they weren't taking cover and pointing weapons at anybody. And they were standing right up there with those guys, The BLM does not want to admit that they came with military force, pointed weapons at protesters, and scared the hell out of them. Enough so that they felt like they needed to take cover and protect themselves. And I hope the jury understands that. I hope they understand that that's what happened. Now, we're going to get the defense is going to get going here in the next couple of weeks. We have a lot of witnesses to listen to from the prosecution. I expect the story to be the same over and over and over again. And, it's going to be tough. There's no doubt about that. It's tough to sit there and listen to, especially since I've got to know some of these young men who went there that day to stand for what was right and ended up getting weapons pointed at them. Nobody went to Bundy Ranch wanting to kill anybody. That's for sure. We see a photo of Ammon Bundy from 3 years ago, and these guys just wanted for once to have it go for them, to be on their side. You know, this man here is Doug Gillespie, who we found out this week backed out of the operation. So did the FBI. So did the Nevada State Highway Patrol. They all told Dan Love, "You've gone too far. We need to stop this and stop it now before people start getting hurt, really hurt." Because the BLM was so disgruntled and they were so embarrassed and their egos were so bruised that they really would have killed American people. We learned this week that that the BLM officer who was the sniper that day, one of the snipers down in the wash, actually had his AR-15 trained on Eric Parker. He had him in his crosshairs, and he had his finger pressing the trigger. And isn't that what Eric Parker has said all along? That guy was going to kill me, right? He was going to start shooting, and he was, and he admitted it right there. And so it was a breathtaking moment, and I looked at Eric, somebody who I know to be rational, caring, an upstanding young man, and I could not help but think how hard it was for his wife, who was sitting right there beside me, how hard it was for her to hear that her husband could have been killed that day, and there was the man sitting on the stand who wanted to do it. Now, he says that he thought better of it because this mysterious white soccer van, he said it had a soccer ball stenciled on the back window and little girls' faces pressed up against the glass as they went by, was his backdrop. So he said he took his finger off the trigger and lowered his weapon, made peace with God, and prepared to die. He also choked up and made a very dramatic pause in there and pretended to gather his composure. And usually when we would hear a story like this, we would be compassionate, to say the least. But it's kind of hard to when you go back and you look at all of the video. And during the time that he said he had Eric Parker in his crosshairs, there was no white van, no soccer ball, no little faces. He made it all up. And how do I know this? Because he was the last witness of the day. And the next day, he got back on the stand. And for some odd reason, the prosecution did something they've never done. And that is go back over his statement again. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He leaves out the part of the white van, soccer ball, and the little girls' faces. He leaves that out. He tries his best to get out of it, and it's amazing. We were all just sitting there going, wow. And we can only sit there and hope that the jury picks up on that they picked up on that lie. They knew that they couldn't prove that what he was saying was true. And the judge just sat there and let him get by with it. Absolutely. Okay, so what you're looking at on the screen right now is what they called flat top. It was the mesa where the snipers were for the BLM. Just letting you guys know. Whenever you hear them say that the protesters had the higher ground, that's a lie. They had the higher ground. They always did. With their men up on the mesa, called flat top, they called it, and their helicopters and their planes, they always had the advantage. Always. Okay? So in this photo, you see police officers. Those are Metro police officers. They're milling about, standing there. You see them there too, no weapons drawn. They're right in the middle of all the protesters. Um, they're not standing behind shields and AR-15s. I'll tell you that. And there it is, the Nevada, um, the Nevada Patrol, Air Patrol there. So they did have the higher ground. And so we were asked that question. I don't know if we went over this yet or not, but they were asked that question many times. You know, why do you think that you guys were so fearful and the Metro Police Department wasn't and the Nevada Highway Patrol wasn't? And they kept saying, I don't know. Well, I do know. I do know why. It is because Daniel P. Love had amped these people up so much that they were confused. They had no idea what was going on. And here's how he confused them. The night before, on the 11th, they had a meeting where Daniel P. Love told them that known domestic terrorists, people who were on the terror watch list, were coming, and that they had intel that they were going to invade the compound. That's why nobody got any sleep. That's why everybody quit drinking beer and sitting around a fire and having a good old time, because Daniel P. Love told them that. And isn't it something that they had had a meeting just before that and called off all operations at the Bundy Ranch on the 11th? You know, but Daniel P. Love couldn't be happy with that. Daniel P. Love wanted his Benghazi. He wanted his American Fallujah. He wanted a war. And he made these people go down into that wash that you're looking at right now. He made them go down there, and he made them point weapons at the American people and threaten to kill them. And make no mistake, we've seen the faces of these men up on that stand, and they would have done it. They have a disdain for the American people that I have never seen before. And you know what? And they want to know why people could be so angry at them that day. Look at these guys. Look at them. You know? So, we had several things that were interesting. There was a communications director, and her name was Tony. And Tony was a blonde-headed girl, semi-attractive, young, and she took the stand. And she talked about communications that day, and how she had come there to count cows and ended up running license plates and IDing people. And on the 12th, she ended up being the one who was communicating over radio to the other men out in the field, down in the wash, where the gunmen were, right? And something about that girl, Tony. Tony was in contact with a young lady. Well, we think she's a young lady. We've never met her. Her name was Robin Kirkham. And Robin Kirkham was the woman that Special Agent Daniel P. Love gave the orders to infiltrate the Bundy website, Facebook pages, social media, Twitter, all of that stuff, and the supporters thereof, and assume a pseudo personality and pretend to be friends of the Bundy and gather intel for him. Isn't that something? Because we know that during the course of the operation, Tony and Robin were in contact with each other on an unsecure chat called Google Chat. So in Google Chat, Tony and Robin were talking about how unreliable and untrustworthy Daniel P. Love was. So can't wait for that question to be asked again. Just why didn't you trust Daniel P. Love? We also learned that from Tony that she shredded documents, and that she had shredded documents many times. It was part of her job. She shreds documents on a daily basis. We also learned that she was the communications director in 2015 for the Burning Man, where Daniel P. Love has now been found guilty of misconduct. And there's now another congressional inquiry as to whether or not he shredded documents about that event from another congressional inquiry, because it was admitted that Daniel P. Love, his whistleblower, his person that turned on him, said that he had told them to shred documents. So I just wonder how many documents Tony has shredded for the man you're looking at right there on the screen, who is no longer a BLM agent because he's been fired, from what I understand. Yeah, that guy. And so Tony said that she shreds documents on a daily basis. It's no big deal. I shred documents and I put them in trash bags and I throw them in the dumpster. I'm not sure if she threw them in the dumpster on top of all the alcohol bottles that were there, but she certainly shredded documents at the compound. And I wonder if BLM Special Agent Daniel P. Love told her to shred documents that she shouldn't have, because it's not unlike him to do that. He's done it before, right? Also, we learned that there are no recordings of the actual radio communications between agents on the ground, because mysteriously they're missing. And why are they missing? Because she said when she went back to retrieve them, that somehow the driver that makes that go, that powers that, had been unplugged. Tony, was Dan Love ever in that trailer? Was he ever in there alone? Did he tell you to unplug it? So what we have to rely on in her testimony are handwritten, typed out notes of what she says happened and the radio traffic that went on between them and the BLM. She said that she only took down what she thought was relevant. And the rest of it, we don't have. Other than we have dash cam video where we can hear radio traffic in the background, but not all of it. You know? We're not hearing all of it, are we? And we never will. Because mysteriously, it never got recorded. So we got to hope that Tony the Shredder is a good note taker. Under stress, where all of her girls had already snapped and were not fit for duty, where Tony was up all night long. I think she said she got 3 hours of sleep in a 48-hour period and she slept in her car. Under all that stress, she's a good note taker. And she got all the relevant stuff that they needed to prosecute men and women who went to a protest and ended up having to defend themselves. Yeah. So we get the guys that come up there. We got the sniper team guys. So now we know that there were snipers at Bundy Ranch. It wasn't a lie, like they said that it was. That was just all made up. That Pete Santilli and Cliven Bundy and Ammon Bundy and Carol Bundy and Statsy and Bailey and Brianna and Ryan and Davy and Mel, they made it all up. There was never any snipers up there. And now we find out there wasn't just one sniper. They had a team of them. And they were on the high mesa above everybody. They had helicopters in the air that we know were shooting cattle. So we know there were guns on those helicopters. So you tell me who had the high ground, right? So it's painful to sit there and listen, you know. I've seen that man there in the beard. Yeah. All these guys. Yeah. Sniper team. That guy there with the AR-15, he's the head of the sniper team. That guy right there, he's the one that had his crosshairs on Eric Parker. And says Eric Parker aimed at him first. He says Eric Parker popped up over the cement barrier and aimed his weapon right at him. And isn't it interesting? Not one clear photo. Not one. He said he did it twice. The first time he did it, he laid his weapon on the concrete barrier and pointed it right at him. Right? And he had him in his crosshairs. Yeah. And then a second time, he says he stood up. Now, we saw pictures of what he said was Eric Parker pointing a weapon. And I'm telling you right now, there's not a soul in this world who can say 100% that Eric Parker even had a weapon. But they want the jury to believe it. They certainly do. And it's a lie. It's a downright lie. The only time that Eric Parker took a defensive weapon was when he hit the pavement. And because he was afraid that they were going to shoot him, he took cover. He took cover. And he thought at that moment that the United States government was going to open fire on protesters. On protesters. Now, they want you to ignore all the guns that they have. They want you to ignore it. Yeah. You guys aren't seeing that. You know, these aren't ballistic helmets they have on. These aren't AR-15s they have strapped around them. Ooh, nope. These guys were all afraid. They were afraid for their life. Yeah. Never had a day like it. Some of these guys are seasoned combat vets. Said they've never experienced anything like that before in their life. And yet there they all are, standing out in the open. Right? Standing out in the open. Some of them standing out in the open so much that they had their back turned toward Eric Parker, away from Eric Parker, I mean. They were walking back and forth. They were standing around making fun of fat women, making fun of Metro Police, drinking water, walking back and forth to the compound, maybe to see if the beer was cold yet. But yeah, look at these guys. They were scared to death. Look at the firepower these guys have. And they were scared to death. Uh-huh. Yeah. And we're supposed to believe that. So that pretty much tells you guys what's going on in that courtroom. We've got a prosecutor who would do anything to win this case. Tell any lie that he had to tell. Boy, are they ever coordinated. All of their stories are the same. Every single one of their stories, they don't deviate from the same story. Something they couldn't remember 3 days after the event, they're now suddenly remembering it just like in living color, these guys. Yep. Oh, yeah. Interesting, huh? They've admitted quite a few things. You know, they admitted that, Daniel P. Love was pushed them all to the brink of collapse. In some cases, the girls in the communication room. snapped and lost it, couldn't handle the pressure that he was putting on them, all in an operation that he was told to stop. The FBI had pulled out and warned him, you've gone too far. Metro Police told him, you've gone too far. Sheriff Gillespie said, you've gone too far. This is stupid. And look at the army he brought anyway. Look at him. Yep. That's America right there. That's how we do a cattle impoundment in America now. Yeah. So, there's so much I could tell you guys. I wish you guys could all be here with us, that you could experience this and hear it for yourself. I'm going to do my best to be back with you, to give you updates at least once a week. If I can, I'll do more than that. But I definitely wanted to be with you guys, right, today and let you know what's happening, right? Dennis Michael Lynch is supposed to be taking the stand here in the next week or so. I would expect that he would be up on the stand this week or sometime. He said that they had advised him that that was going to happen. And that's going to be interesting. But we want to invite all of you to come to Nevada if you're within driving distance and hang out with us out in the front. If you don't want to go in the courthouse, some good people standing out there, standing up and representing, passing out constitutions and talking to the people. We have a lot of support. We do. In the coming weeks, I think we're going to find out that there's a lot of corruption going on in the background while this trial is happening. People are getting threatened if they testify, if they keep standing with the Bundys. Yeah, lives are at stake. Not lives, but livelihood. Maybe lives, but definitely people's livelihoods. And it's a shame, but it's happening, and that'll come out, I'm sure. The idea that they shred documents and drink and unplug, software, vital recording software. The idea that people who have make the difference between life and death have been sleep deprived, hungover, and given the task of seeing to it that that this thing turns into a massacre. It's just amazing to sit there and listen to it. And they're all taking the stand and they're all crying, especially the men. That's pretty interesting. These hardcore guys. They're real butthurt too about, as they were leaving, that the American people had the audacity. They had the nerve to call them names and flip them off and throw a cardboard sign at them. Oh, there's been talk of bomb threats at the hotels, and none of them felt safe until they got back to Las Vegas. I'm not kidding you guys, okay? This stuff was really going on and really being said this week. So anyway, I feel like I've talked too much, but y'all come to Las Vegas if you can. Stand out there and represent. Come and be observers in the courtroom. Pete tells me to give you guys his best. He's going to be coming home soon. He truly believes that, and so do I. And I want to thank all of you for your continued support. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where we find out who is who. Who is who, right? So again, thanks guys. And I'll try my best to get back with you with more updates. Connect with me on my Facebook page. It's Deb Jordan on Facebook. You can find me. We're doing updates there. And also Eric Parker's wife, Andrea Olson Parker. She's doing updates. You guys can go to itmattershowyousstand.com and find updates. You can get updates through Anthony. What is Anthony's name? I forget what Anthony's last name is, but it's Bundy Ranch Standoff.info. He's doing updates. And there's a lot of information out there. You just have to look for it. It's there. And we're covering it quite well. There's live updates every single day from the courthouse steps, about 2 or 3 times a day, where we're giving live updates and letting people know what's happening in the courtroom immediately after it happens. So please feel free to tune in, right? So I want to thank Next News Network, Gary Franchi, running his montage behind you guys, dramatic photos from April the 12th. They capture the moment, don't they? Yeah. And yeah, these photos were taken by Shannon Bushman, a very talented photographer. So stay with us, you guys. I promise to be back soon. I'll give you some more updates, and be well out there, okay? And be safe.